give you a little, some of the coverage of IT and the D, and the fact that something that seems relatively novel and simplistic may be one of the most powerful things that we unleash here. And when Megan mentioned in the introduction interacting with the president and the vice president, one of the more meaningful moments was drawing this out and essentially communicating to the chief executive of this country that driving this alignment is exactly what we need to be doing. I sort of decided a long time ago that my presentations were just going to be the same no matter who I was talking to. So my arms are waving and I'm, gesticulating, and, the president was kind enough to listen and take it in. And within a couple of months, funding for that type of alignment was coming out of the White House, and the focus on education and alignment is something that the president stayed consistent on. Trace, I think I'm stuck. Being a leader. Two extremes graphically presented here, George Patton and Gandhi. Two individuals that led in two different ways and yet were perceived as incredible leaders of their time. While it's a little tongue-in-cheek to be talking about those two extremes, they do represent stylistic and mission capabilities that are very different and yet perceived as extremely successful individuals. There are a lot of ways to lead, but it is an activity. It is something that has to be done and done actively. Managing fear, that's a big thing. When you're in the position of CEO, it can be pretty easy to be afraid. I think that a lot of people get overcome by fear and are paralyzed. And I think it's a major, it's a positive characteristic to understand that if we're talking about what can happen, we don't want to pretend that it's really all in our control, because it's not. I mean, you do the best you can every day. So managing fear, managing concern, the what ifs, torturing yourself, can lead, as I said, to paralysis. Having a healthy respect for what can happen and having a healthy respect for the understanding that there are things that are out of your control actually leads to a little bit of freedom. Because you basically say, look, I could do everything exactly right and still something might go on that is going to harm my business. And conversely, if you are not, we don't die 1,000 deaths in our company. We die once. We don't lament things over and over again. What happens? What if? Managing fear is a major element. Taking intelligent, calculated risks with good thinking behind it. At Galaxy, we talk all the time with our coworkers about what we can and should be doing. And it is a dialogue that is, what do you think? What do you think about this? Is this a good idea? Punch holes in it. Challenge this. It's very important elements to taking intelligent risks. There are firms that do not take, don't take risks, and they do not have ambitious goals. And that is a self-limitation. Self-limitation is a dangerous thing. Well, we're going to stop. We're just going to repeat this over and over again. What do we know about change? Change is a constant. Businesses cannot do what they do today over and over again and hope to stay in business. Limitation, unambitious goals are a major threat, and leaders have to overcome them. Embracing change, as I mentioned, big deal. So, in summary, I've been fortunate to be in this business for the last 20-something odd years. I enjoy what I do very much. I enjoy the human elements. I enjoy the fact that we are successful in the marketplace, but it is an ongoing challenge. And stuff happens every day. Good stuff, bad stuff. The CEO is in the position, as I indicated earlier, of being a pinball brain and having all these balls floating around all the time, keeping them going. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. And I'll end and take questions where I started. Detroit is the place to be, and I'm thrilled, and we're thrilled as a company to be here. So I thank you for your attention. I'll take questions. We have a microphone.
Good morning, Tim. Ray Bolden. We met earlier today, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to furnish your offices here in Detroit. That was a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, they're great.
Thank you. What advice would you give to me? I'm starting a new business. I'm opening an all-state agency the first of the year as a new business person. What advice would you give me in starting up and working with my associates and team members and customers?
For me, everything starts with the market and understanding what the market is for your service or product. That comes from dialogue and conversation. And understanding what elements your competitors are presenting that are working and what elements are not. So if you have a potential customer base, you're in communication with that customer base, you're asking them what they like about their current service providers, what's missing, where can you differentiate yourself? And that dialogue, if you're talking about leveraging, let's say, the same customer base that is purchasing your furnishings, then you have a dialogue there. You talk to those individuals and say, I'm moving into this space, or I'm contemplating moving into this space. Here are the services that I think are key. What do you think of that? Am I making the correct assumptions? If you had to make the world over again, what would you include? What else could be done? What do you say to yourself, gee whiz, if we only had this or we only had that? That kind of dialogue is essentially market research. And the same can come if you're looking to hire employees and you say, you know what, you've provided this service to customers in the past. What have they said? Do they like it? The firm that you used to work for, that you currently work for, how are they perceived? They're doing a good job? And those answers will help you shape your business, in my view. But it is market. Understand your market and tailor your service offerings to what that market is telling you, in my view.
Morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you for letting us inside your brain a little bit this morning. When you talk about an organisation understanding its core competencies and what it's good at, and you apply that same question to the city of Detroit, what is it that you think, what core competencies or advantages do you think that we have in this city that are going to convince other companies like Galaxy to set up here, or the talent that we're creating in these universities to stay?
Yeah. First of all, this is a place where the infrastructure is still okay. If you look at what's going on in our neighborhood here, which is really the Campus Martius technology hub emerging, I focus on that. And so I say to a firm or an individual that's contemplating relocating either their business or themselves, look at what's being built here and understand that you'd be getting in at the early stage. We're here at Book Cadillac. Condominiums here that would sell in Manhattan for $1.6 million can be acquired for $200,000, and they're gorgeous. You approach a technology worker or someone or a business and you say, look, you're going to be in the beginning of what would otherwise develop as Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley or Austin or name the other places. And the excitement here, okay, notwithstanding all the challenges, but the excitement is something new is emerging. And we've seen that over the last 3 years, and that's going to continue. So I think the thread for me is this is a burgeoning technology hub. It is, and it will continue. And getting involved with that early, especially for someone who's, let's say, 25 years old, holy mackerel, how cool would that be? And that's the way I look at it. I moved to New York City when I was 25 years old, and I had a blast. And New York City was in 1985, it was a mess. I mean, really, crime, dirt, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, those are some of the knocks on Detroit. So again, I have these things swirling around. I say, well, didn't this happen to New York? New York City, I remember, they said it was ungovernable. They said crime is a constant. You might as well get used to it. Well, guess what? That's incorrect. And so they, whoever they are, they would say things about Detroit. Well, they can say it all they want. This place is turning around. And if you want to get in on it, okay, this is the time to you want to get in on something, you want to be an early adopter, come to Detroit. That's the way I look at it. That's what I would say. That would be my short answer.
Good morning, Mr. Bryan. Thank you very much for being here and sharing with us. One of the things I've enjoyed about the Inside the CEO Mind program that the Chamber has put on in the past is listening to CEOs who tell us a little bit more about themselves that we don't see in the media or that we haven't seen. I would love if you're able to tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you moved from that back bedroom to this headquarters down the street here, and maybe some of the highlights and even lowlights that you had to experience to get to where you're at today.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I went to college at Rutgers University, which has recently been accredited as a university, so that's good news, after I left. I worked in a gas station all through college, and I graduated in 1982, which was a horrible recession, and I worked in both McDonald's and Burger King before starting in technology. So I had an appreciation, I think, of some humility in the honor or the virtue of work. I was happy to have a job in all of those circumstances. So that's one. I do have one okay story that you'll like. Early in Galaxy, which again is 1990, 91, something like that, we got a major contract to support the consolidation of banks in New Jersey. First Fidelity Bank. This was at the time where banks were failing in 1991. So the banks are failing, and there is a government entity that is taking all the bad banks and giving them to good banks. And so the good banks had to integrate the systems of the bad banks. So we're in this integration effort with First Fidelity Bank in New Jersey, which was the largest bank in New Jersey at the time. And we've died and gone to heaven, right? This is phenomenal. It's a recession. We've got all this work. We're competing against EDS, okay? So once again, there's Galaxy and some huge player. The problem was that First Fidelity had fraud in it. And someone in First Fidelity had the ability to write purchase orders and to fill the purchase orders. So this individual started selling the bank paper, except he didn't deliver any paper, and he just paid himself. He set up a shell company, he paid himself, he went to jail. What that meant for First Fidelity, though, is that they got all kinds of afraid. And so invoices went all the way up to the chairman's office now for everything. So there's Galaxy in its infancy, providing all this service, dozens and dozens of people working on this. And they're not paying us because their procurement and payment process is so bogged down trying to prevent any future fraud. So the day came in which, and again, I'm young and naive. We're working with our local bank, and I go into our bank, and our line of credit is tapped. It's out. I said, well, we just need some more. What are you talking about? He said, well, look, we've got this major contract. They owe us, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The bank said, no way. They owe you that money. You go get that money. Oh, well, geez, okay. So what transpired? I mean, this is after all kinds of calls to First Fidelity Bank trying to get our money. First Fidelity's corporate headquarters was in Newark. And the day came in which we were out of money. And so as push and shove will come together, I got in my car and I drove to the corporate offices of First Fidelity Bank. And you can imagine the days security was lighter. I went up to the chairman's office and I introduced myself, I said who I was, and I said, I cannot leave here without a check. We picked the number, I think it was $100,000. give you some perspective. And I'm not leaving. So I sat there for a couple of hours while they produced a check. I then got in my car and drove like hell back into New York City to deposit it in our bank and made it happen. But you can imagine, again, as a business trying to get off the ground, of somebody going, can you imagine today going to somebody's corporate office and sitting there and crossing your arms and saying, I'm not going to leave until you give me a check? It's insane. And yet, that's a Galaxy, that's a real life Galaxy story. And it kind of says, when you're in the position of trying to grow a business, you do what you have to do. And I learned a little bit about banking. I learned a little bit about, managing receivables, and I learned a little bit about, the power of stamping your feet when you have to get what you need. And that was a good lesson all around. But it's cutting it a little tight, I got to the bank about, 5 minutes before 5, and in those days, banks closed at 5, and I'm running in there with a check saying, I got it, So, anyway.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning.
I have a question for you regarding balance. As a CEO, you're responsible for grand vision, but managing a company of our size, you still have responsibility to be in the trenches. How do you manage those two things without becoming too granular and too hands-on? I know you have a lot of trust in your management team,
right,
but as a founder and CEO, and I know this is still your baby, how are you managing those two things?
Well, it is about information gathering. And at this stage, whether we're talking to a customer or we're talking to a coworker, the idea is to understand what's going on. Because without that information, then we're sort of flying blind. And, self-delusion is dangerous. I mean, everything's going great. I got nothing to worry about. It's fine, whatever. But that's not the case. So you can choose to find out what the situation is and look to deal with it, and challenge yourself, challenge your coworkers to get it right. This is a dynamic thing, being a CEO, just like in all of our lives. Who the heck knows what's going to happen next? You do the best you can, and you seek the information. You seek to know what is wrong, what the challenges are, so you can do something about it. Without that information, you can't run the business. So the balance is that you're in a constant state of gathering and disseminating information, trying to manage activities that lead to the goals that you've set for yourself. And it doesn't end. And there should be no expectation that it does end. It doesn't. It goes on and on and on. You can pretend it doesn't. You can pretend it doesn't go on and on, but it does. And you have to be set for that. So you put all the energy that you can into gathering and processing information and understanding how things are going, where they're going, and what you need to do to drive success. CEOs are responsible to customers, responsible to coworkers, their families, internationally. I mean, there's a few things on your mind. Again, I'll give you the pinball machine, which is is the metaphor for the day.
Hi, Tim. Thank you. My name is Tanya Heidelberg. Yeah, I don't want to be a mic hog. I have two questions.
Go ahead.
But we'll cut off at one if need be. First, this has to do with education. There is a pilot going on now to transform the way we do high schools in Detroit. And one of the concepts is to pull academic rigor and a professional technical curriculum into high school. So assuming that for a minute, if you think about system requirements and you want to build requirements for the student that's going to come out on the other end, what are the other characteristics that we need to be thinking about?
I think that if you want to call it the secret sauce of that process, is to identify and encourage individuals that are driven to be successful. That if you're developing the culture of a program like that, we want to say, this isn't just, you're not just going to slide through this, okay? This is an opportunity, and capitalizing on this opportunity is a prerequisite for participating in this program. So, this is something that you as a student have to embrace, and you have to demonstrate your willingness to do that. You're essentially needing to grow up. You're describing an opportunity to get into a program that is going to lead to something positive. Whomever is gravitating to that needs to respect the opportunity that's being provided and raise their game. And so my view is that the individuals that are administrating and teaching in a program like that need to stress the individual's responsibility to succeed in that program and to show respect for the opportunity that they have. And if they're not doing that, then let somebody else in that will do it. That's how I feel about it. This is sort of the idea that it's incumbent on all of us to show our value to customers, coworkers, educational institutions. I should be in this program because I'm going to take it and I'm going to go here. Not, well, this is another thing, and yeah, I hope it goes okay, and yeah, they better teach me something. I want to consume. I want to be a good learner. That kind of thing, I think, needs to be encouraged.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
The second very brief question has to do with innovation. When innovation happens in an organization, it usually happens at the sort of the direct level. Someone's creating something.
Yep.
Have you guys developed any strategies to connect that concept, that thought, that spark to the folks in the organization that can actually fund it and make it happen and make it?
We have an innovation office within Galaxy, and we're constantly, which is an independent entity that is constantly polling the organization about what it's doing and things that we can and should be doing better and differently. So that's one element. The other is that we encourage our people to bring creative solutions that can be applied to customer projects. So we have people building stuff almost on their own time to integrate into the solutions that we're building for our customer. And that is a cultural element. That is the most rewarding, because we'll have customers come and visit us, and they will sit down with people that have been working on their systems, and they'll say, this is Charlie, or this is Ramesh, and he developed this thing that is now saving you $1 million a year. And he did it, of his own volition as part of his focus on innovation. So that kind of recognition, I think, helps drive that culture.
We have one last question.
All right.
Thank you for your comments this morning. I'm Margaret Williams. I'm Dean of the Business School at Wayne State. And there's a question I've been getting a lot recently, and I think it's actually more appropriate for you, and that is, how is the bankruptcy situation affecting you and your company daily, weekly, in the long-term planning horizon?
I think that if the bankruptcy is rightly understood, it is the activity. Something needed to happen. It was either going to be a negotiated change in the finances of the city or a non-negotiated change. And either way, money that is being spent one way today has to be redirected to core services like lights and police and emergency services and safety and blight, addressing blight, all of that. So unfortunately, the powers that be were not able to negotiate that without bankruptcy. So now bankruptcy, like a lot of things, is a fact of life. It is going to happen. So what we present to the world is, look, that means that this entity, this city that is $18 billion in debt and losing $350 million a year, is going to redirect its money to core services. The process stinks. Too bad that had to happen that way. The good news is that if you go to the marketplace of people and businesses, you say, this is done. They're doing this. What does that mean? It means things are going to continue to improve around here. It's unfortunate that some people will be hurt, but the end result is that services will improve in this city and it will be more desirable, and that is essentially positive. So that's, that it means it's good news. So again, thank you all for your attention, and happy holidays.
I want to thank Tim for his presentation today, and on behalf of the Chamber, we have a gift for him. As many of you probably saw, the October cover of the Detroiter magazine featured a number of initiatives, companies, and leaders that are helping with the transformation of Detroit. One of the initiatives featured on the cover is the Love Detroit campaign that Tim introduced at the 2013 Mackinac Policy Conference. So we have a framed copy for Tim.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming today, and thank you, Tom Bank and Trust, for sponsoring this morning's event.
Also, there are booklets of remarks available. Donnie, do you have them?
Gift bags.
Gift bags outside. So please get a gift bag and